Hey, what's up, guys? This is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with our DraftKings Benny's Bats edition for Friday, June 3rd. Big slate we have today, 14 games, so we're going to get right into it. The idea of our Benny's Bats section is what we like to do is look at each pitcher that's on the mound, figure out what their weakness is, and then look at which bats on the other team profile to do the best against them. So let's start at the top with the Los Angeles Angels taking on the Pittsburgh Pirates. Francisco Liriano's on the mound for the Pirates, and although he's a good pitcher, he's been bad lately. Too many walks, too many home runs he's been giving up. In his last 4 games, 15 base on balls he's allowed and 6 home runs. So if you got a pitcher that's walking guys and then giving up home runs, that's not going to be the recipe for a good start. You know, if he's putting men on base and then giving up long balls, he's giving up 2-run and 3-run home runs, and you know those add up quickly and can really hurt his ERA and hurt his overall score. You're looking at that Angels team, though. There's not a lot of guys that really stand out. I mean, obviously, Mike Trout is number one, 414 WOBA, 289 ISO. Guy's an absolute beast against right or left-handed pitching, so it really doesn't matter. He's probably my favorite play on the day. I think he's going to have a good day here against Liriano. After that, though, I mean, you can look at Yunel Escobar, who's been hitting on top of the order. Maybe guys like Pujols and CJ Cron, who've been hitting in the middle of the order, give you some power, some home run upside against Liriano. Like I said, not a lot of guys that really stand out, but Liriano has been bad lately, so I think you can look at a couple of these guys on the Angels. On the other side for the Angels, you got Jared Weaver up there. I mean, you know, he throws an 84-mile-an-hour fastball. I don't know how he gets outs, but he hits his spots, and he still manages to do okay. I'm not going to say he's a good pitcher at this point in his career because he's not, but he's not as horrible as people make him out to be. Left-handed bats do better against them, but right now both sides of the plate I think are hitting over 300 against them in 2016. The problem here is the Pirates got a couple guys that are banged up. You know, Gregory Polanco is listed as day-to-day. McCutchen left the game early yesterday. He's listed as day-to-day. You know, you take those 2 big bats out of the lineup, and it's not as scary as it normally is here, this Pittsburgh team. You still got guys like, you know, Young Ho Kong. You know, Harrison is Josh Harrison leading off for them lately. You know, Jaso, left-handed bat, should be towards the top of the order against the righty. You know, Sterling Marte is okay. You know, Matt Joyce has actually been playing a lot lately. He could be a sneaky left-handed bat to use. If Polanco or Kutch don't play, Joyce is one of the backup outfielders that gets in there. So, you know, lefty, he hits right-handed pitching really well. He could be a cheap, sneaky salary-saving option for you, depending on where he's hitting in the order, to be honest. Next game we can talk about, we got Milwaukee going up against Philly. Slipping Jimmy Nelson pitching for Milwaukee. He's very tough on right-handed bats. Left-handed bats have been the way to go after him. This Philly offense isn't all that great. I mean, they've been, you know, shut down by quite a few pitchers lately, including Chase Anderson last night. You know, left-handed bats-wise, I guess Odubel Herrera you might want to look at. Only other guys that I think are lefty on the team, you got Ryan Howard, who's been horrible lately. You know, Freddie Galvis and Andres Blanco, I think, are switch hitters, so maybe those guys would deserve a look if they're hitting in like the 2 or the 3 spot of the order. You know, the rest of this Philly team, though, is all right-handed bats, so there aren't really a lot of guys that you want to take. Nelson is tough on righties. You know, lefties are the way to get him. He had 300 batting average allowed to left-handed bats last year. You know, righties only hit about 200 against them. So I'm not looking at any of the righties on Philly. I guess you can look at some of the lefties, but again, this isn't a high-scoring offense, so you don't get a lot of punch, a lot of power out of them. On the other side, you got Vincent Velasquez, who's been really good. Left-handed bats hit him a little bit better, but he's honestly been tough on guys from both sides of the plate. You know, maybe a guy like Jonathan Villar, one of the best left-handed bats on Milwaukee. He's been on fire lately. 12 or more DraftKings points in 7 of his last 10 games. Hit a home run yesterday, has a bunch of games with some stolen bases. You know, he can rack up some hits, score some runs. So there's a lot of ways that he can put points, fantasy points up on the board for us. You know, his price is a little bit discounted. He's down to 4,500. He was closer to 5K for most of the week. So, you know, I guess he's a valid option. Maybe a Scooter Gennett, another left-handed bat. Not really looking at the guys like New and Heist towards the bottom of the order, the other left-handers that they have. The only right-hander I think you can even consider is probably Ryan Braun. 363 WOBA, 208 ISO score for him in righty-on-righty matchups. Like I said, though, Velasquez is tough on righties, so I'm not sure that this is a, you know, great spot for him, to be honest. Next game we're going to talk about Baltimore against New York. You got Chris Tillman on the mound, and Tillman's been awesome in 2016. I mean, both righties and lefties are hitting like 200 or below against them. You know, he dominated the Yankees about 2 weeks ago in the start that he had here. He does have a little bit of an elevated fly ball rate, so he can give up some home runs, especially in Baltimore. No Yankees have really done well against him in the past, though, so there's no BVP history that you can really look at and say, oh, this guy's good to use, that guy's good to use. On the other side of this game, we got Nate Eovaldi. Left-handed bats have a higher average and a higher home run rate against him, so Chris Davis obviously stands out. 394 WOBA, 317 ISO score. Also think you can look at Manny Machado, who's really good in righty-on-righty matchups. 392 WOBA, 254 in those for him. You know, guys like Trumbo and Adam Jones had 2 home runs each yesterday, so there is a lot of power in this lineup. You know, Eovaldi's a guy who throws a pretty straight four-seam fastball. So if he's not getting any movement on it, these guys can square him up from the right or the left side. You know, he could be in a tough spot here today. Could give up a couple home runs against this Baltimore offense that is, you know, basically just scorching hot right now. Other side of the next game we can look at actually is the Chicago White Sox against the Detroit Tigers. Carlos Rodon pitching for the White Sox. Right-handed bats, higher average against them, more home runs, higher fly ball rate. You know, so you really want to look at righties, and that's a tough spot for him against Detroit because they have a whole lineup full of right-handed bats, and all these guys can hit him pretty well. So I think stacking up Detroit today is definitely a smart idea. Miguel Cabrera, 384 WOBA, 189 ISO. You got guys like Kinsler, Castellanos, JD Martinez, all 370 WOBA, 200 ISO kind of guys. So, you know, like I said, there's a lot of right-handed bats here that can hit him well. You can even look at guys like you know, Justin Upton further on down in the order, or Moyer, or whoever else they put in there. You know, like I said, I think this is going to be a really tough spot here for Carlos Rodon. Other side of this game, we got Jordan Zimmerman on the mound, and left-handed bats have a higher average against him. You know, there's not a lot of pop in this offense with the White Sox. I mean, the best left-handed bat they have is Adam Eaton, 352 WOBA. You can look at a guy like Jose Abreu, I guess, who's pretty good in righty-on-righty matchups, 361 WOBA for him, 213 ISO score. You know, like I said, there's really not a lot to look at here. I think Zimmerman might be in line for a pretty good start here today. I think he's really nice on FanDuel today because I do think that those Detroit bats are going to light up Rodon. So I think he's almost a lock for a win. And like I said, without a lot of guys profiling well against them, you know, he could have a pretty solid start here. Next game, we can look at Kansas City against Cleveland. Danny Salazar on the mound for Cleveland. About 210 batting average to both right and left-handed bats since 2015. So this guy's been very tough on guys from both sides of the plate. The only bat I'm really looking at on Kansas City, Eric Hosmer, has been pretty hot lately. 395 WOBA for him, 203 ISO, 8 of 23 lifetime with 2 home runs against Salazar. So he's somebody that I think you can look at. You know, with all the injuries that they have, there's not a lot of other big bats that you really like on this KC team. You know, you got guys like Whit Merrifield and Paolo Orlando, and, you know, they've been solid. You know, Drew Butera hit a home run yesterday. You know, these are not big bats. These are not guys that you would expect to, but they're getting the job done. So, you know, I don't know. I'm a little weary of using Salazar today because, you know, KC, like I said, on paper, there's nobody that really profiles other than Hosmer as somebody that will do well. But this team has just been getting it done over the last couple of games. Next guy we can look at, Edinson Volquez on the other side of this game. A little bit of a reverse splits action going on with him. Right-handed bats have a higher average. He does have a low fly ball and home run rate to both sides of the plate, though. So I'm not expecting them to put up huge numbers. I don't think I would stack up this Cleveland team at all. There are a couple guys that are interesting, though. Jason Kipnis, one of them, even though he's a left-handed bat, and you know, Volquez does have those reverse splits. 378 WOBA against righties for him, 168 ISO, and he's 4 of 14 lifetime with the home run against Volquez. So not bad numbers. The only other guy, if you're looking for an upside play for a tournament, Carlos Santana, 343 WOBA, 217 ISO against right-handed pitching, 3 of 12 lifetime with 2 home runs off Volquez. So he's somebody that you can probably look at as well. Other than that, though, I don't really see a lot of guys that I'm looking at here. Probably not using Lindor today. Don't really like Napoli all that much in this spot. You know, like I said, there really isn't a ton of guys that I'm looking at. Next game, New York Mets at the Miami Marlins. Noah Syndergaard on the mound for the Mets, and he's been a stud in 2016. You know, left-handed bats have done slightly better against him, but I'm not really looking to take a lot of bats against him. You know, if you want to take guys, you want to look at the lefties. So, you know, Ichiro, Yelich, Justin Bour. You know, Derek Dietrich is still banged up, so he's probably not on my list. But like I said, why do you really want to take guys against Syndergaard? There's much softer spots elsewhere. On the other side of this game, we got Tom Kohler pitching for Miami. Excuse me. Left-handed bats have a higher average against him. Pretty low home run rate, though. So I think you can look at the lefties on the Mets. Guys like Granderson, guys like Conforto, guys like Neil Walker. Walker's been moved up into the 5-hole lately, especially with, David Wright being out. So I think the left-handed bats, they're in play. They're guys I could look at. The only righty I really like is Cespedes, who hits well in righty-on-righty situations. Miami's not a great hitter's park, so I don't know if I want to stack up the Mets, but I think you can take one or two of these guys as a one-off in the tournament. Conforto, probably my favorite of all of them. Seems to be cheap for some reason every day, and he actually has the best numbers this year against right-handed pitching. Next game, we can look at Toronto against Boston. David Price on the mound for Boston. He's had an up and down year. He's had some really good starts, like lights out, Cy Young kind of starts. And he's had some other starts where you're just like, what the heck is wrong with this guy? Against Toronto this year, he had one amazing start. He put up like 30-something DraftKings points. And then he had another okay start in his last start against them. Went like 6 innings. I think he gave up 2 or 3 runs. A solid start, but nothing great on the upside. There are a lot of guys on this Toronto team that hit left-handed pitching well, and a bunch of them actually have pretty good numbers against Price. So I don't really know how I feel about using Price here today. Joey Batista's 19 of 55 lifetime against him with 6 home runs. So those are some really solid numbers. Encarnacion is 10 of 44 with 3 home runs. And then Josh Donaldson is 4 of 11 against them as well. So the guys that you would expect to be able to hit a left-handed pitcher well, the righties at the top of that order, they've all actually done pretty well against Price in his career. So even though Price has been good against them this year, I just feel like there's a lot of risk in this. So at most, I think Price is probably a GPP play at best. But I do think that some of these Toronto bats could light him up too. So if I took Price in a GPP, I may also put a stack of some of these Toronto right-handers in there because, again, the numbers and some of their past history against Price has been pretty good. Other side of this game, we got R.A. Dickey pitching against Boston. He's pitched against Boston twice this year, and they hit him well both times. Mookie Betts, 10 of 31 lifetime against them. Ortiz, 10 of 36 with 3 home runs. Xander Bogaerts, 13 of 36 with the home run. I like using BVP against the knuckleball pitcher because some of the other stats don't really paint the kind of picture that you want. What you really want to know is which guys hit the knuckleball well. And Xander Bogaerts, Mookie Betts, and David Ortiz are 3 guys that do actually hit it pretty well. So those are 3 guys that I definitely would like to have a little bit of exposure to today. Next game we can talk about, we got Washington at Cincinnati. Gio Gonzalez is on the mound, and he's really tough on left-handed bats. Right-handed bats have a higher average against them. And also this year, they actually have a really high fly ball rate, which is, much higher than he usually allows. So there may be some regression to the mean coming. But as of now, he's been giving up a lot of fly balls, and a lot of those have translated into home runs, which has kind of been his problem early on in the year. There are a lot of guys, right-handed bats, that I think you can look at on Cincinnati. Like I said, he's tough on lefties. So a guy like Votto, not in a great spot today. Hamilton, Jay Bruce, not really in great spots. But you can look at a guy like Cozart, 371 WOBA against left-handed pitching. Eugenio Suarez had 2 home runs yesterday, 368 WOBA against lefties with a 212 ISO, so he's in play. Adam Duvall, another guy, got a lot of power on that team. Right-handed bat, hits left-handed pitching pretty well. Even Brandon Phillips, another guy who kind of flies under the radar, has hit left-handed pitching well his entire career, right-handed bat with a little bit of pop as well. So there are some guys that you can look at against Gio here. I don't think this is such a soft spot for Gio. And in a place like Cincinnati, which is the best home run hitters park in the majors, I definitely think he's going to get tagged for at least 1, if not more, home runs today by this, by this team. On the other side of this game, you got Brandon Finnegan, the lefty. Finnegan hasn't really been all that good after his first couple starts this year where he was pretty solid. Right-handed bat's really the way you want to go after him. A guy like Ryan Zimmerman kills left-handed pitching. 401 WOBA, 320 ISO for him, so just absolutely eye-popping numbers. The price gets jacked up when he faces a lefty, but again, he's been that good. I mean, he homered the last game they played against a lefty. He's put up some big numbers against lefties all season long, so he's definitely somebody that you want to have a little bit of exposure to in tournament play tonight because he could have a big game today. Jason Worth, another guy who does well against left-handed pitching. Even Anthony Rendon, although Rendon has an ISO score below 100, so really not a lot of pop, not a lot of power out of him this year. But again, he is a guy who has hit lefties well in his past. I even think you can look at a guy like Bryce Harper, 404 WOBA, 237 in lefty-on-lefty matchups for him. Finnegan, not a particularly tough lefty or incredibly lights out to left-handed bats. So I do think that Harper would be another guy you can look at. Next game, we can talk about Seattle at Texas. We got Yu Darvish on the mound for Texas, and he was lights out in his first start, even though he only went like 80, 85 pitches, went 5 innings. The talk is that he's going to get 85 to 95 pitches in this game before his second start. Now, he put up 24 fantasy points in his first start and only 85 pitches, so if they're giving him an extra 10 pitches, that's probably an extra inning here. And again, he's pretty cheap. He's only like $9,000, so I think you can get 25 to 30 fantasy points out of Yu Darvish here today, which would be a great return for the $9,200 price tag that they're asking for him. I'm not really looking at any of the Seattle bats. I guess you would probably want to go with some of the lefties, maybe a guy like Cano or, Seager, but like I said, I mean, we're not really looking to take many bats against Yu Darvish here. I think Darvish is a really good pitcher. I think he's, still working his way back to full strength, but he looked good in the 5 2/3 innings or so that he pitched in the last game. Not really looking to take any bets against him. I think if Seattle does any damage today, it's going to be against the bullpen, not against Darvish. The other side of this game, we got Taijuan Walker. Right-handed bats, higher average against them last couple of years. Does have a low home run rate, though. He's not a guy that really gets lit up, for the long ball all that much. Couple guys that stand out to him. Like we said, right-handed bats have done better. And if you look at the stats, Adrian Beltre, 5 of 11 against them. So even though Beltre normally not a great guy in righty-on-righty matchups, something about Taijuan Walker that, he hits him pretty well. So I do like Adrian Beltre a little bit here. Prince Fielders also hit him well, against righties. Fielders got a 350 WOBA, 142 ISO score, 5 of 11 lifetime against Walker as well. So Prince is in play. And then maybe even a guy like Jurickson Profar, who's leading off for them. He's still pretty cheap. He's leading off on the top of the order, right-handed bat that I think could do some damage. So those are the guys that I would look at to go up against Walker. Remember, Walker is much better at home. He's on the road for this start, so there is a good chance that he could, give up a couple runs here. Next game we're going to look at is Oakland at Houston. In this game, we got Jesse Hahn pitching for Oakland, and left-handed bats have a higher average and more home runs against them. In 2016, lefties have already hit 5 home runs in 13 innings against him. So you're looking at this team on Houston. I mean, that points to guys like maybe a Colby Rasmus probably being in the best spot. Cleanup hitter, left-handed bat, does have some power, can jack one out of there. Maybe guys like Valbuena or Castro lower down in the order as well. You look at the righties, the guys that we normally like to take, guys like Jose Altuve, guys like Carlos Correa, guys like George Springer. These 3 guys are a combined 2 of 14 lifetime against Jesse Hahn. So he is tough on the righties, and like I said, this Houston team does not really profile all that well against them. So I don't know how many bats I'm going to take. If I'm taking anybody, it's probably going to be Colby Rasmus, and even then, it's probably only going to be a tournament-type play. On the other side of this game, we got Doug Fister pitching. Left-handed bats have a higher average and more home runs against him. The 2 guys that kind of stand out a little bit to me, Stephen Vogt's been hitting in the 3-hole lately, 345 WOBA, 192 ISO. There's not a lot of great catching options on any slate. So I think Vogt is somebody we can definitely look at as a cheap catcher today. I also like Coco Crisp, who's 7 of 18 lifetime against Doug Fister. So he's another guy who's hit Fister well. Switch hitter, batting from the left side, I would assume, against Fister, and he has gotten some hits. Not a lot of power, but he is a guy that can get on base. So not a pretty solid cash game play, I think, from the top of the order. Road team should get a full 9 innings, maximum number of at-bats. A lot of arrows pointing up for Coco Crisp today. Next game, we can talk about Tampa Bay at Minnesota. Jake Odorizzi on the mound. He's a reverse splits guy. Right-handed bats have a higher average against them. You're looking at this Minnesota team, especially with Miguel Sanu banged up and not playing. Eduardo Nunez is probably the best bat numbers-wise to take against them. 359 WOBA, 140 ISO. I just think this could be a pretty good spot for Odorizzi because I don't really see a lot of these Minnesota guys that I'm going to be afraid of. The only left-handed bat they really have is Joe Mauer. Not really scared of him. Some of the other righties that they have, guys like Dozier, guys like Plouffe, none of these guys really hit right-handed pitching all that well. They don't profile very well against righties. So, like I said, I think Odorizzi could be in a good spot here. Not really looking at any Minnesota bats. On the other side of this game, we got Ricky Nolasco, the righty. Reverse splits guy, right-handed bats have been hitting better against them, but left-handed bats do well too. It's not like he's lights out to them. He does have a high fly ball rate, does have a high home run rate, so I do think some of these guys can take him yard. And remember, Tampa Bay is one of the best home run hitting teams in the league right now. I think they're in the top 5 for home runs. A lot of guys, all right-handed, but a lot of guys that have power. The one lefty with some power is Corey Dickerson, who's kind of been slumping this year, but he looks like he's starting to come around and get some hits in the last week or two. So he's somebody that's interesting. You can look at the righties with power, guys like Brandon Guyer, Evan Longoria, maybe Steven Souza or Steve Pearce, the guys towards the top of the order with a little bit of pop. Like I said, I don't think Nolasco is a very good pitcher. I do think that Tampa Bay is going to get some runs against them. I don't know if I want to stack them up. Like I said, these righties are not normally the way you want to attack them, but Nolasco's been bad to both sides of the plates, and he gives up a lot of home runs. Minnesota's a better hitter's ballpark than Tampa Bay is, so I do think some of these guys are going to have a good game today. Next game, we've talked about San Francisco at St. Louis. Johnny Cueto on the mound for San Francisco, and he's been tough on right-handed bats. Left-handed bats hit about 240-ish against them. This is a good offense, so I don't think it's a great spot for Cueto, but I also don't think it's a great spot for the Cardinals. I guess Matt Carpenter is probably the guy who profiles the best. 395 WOBA, 262 ISO, going to be up on the top of the order there. Matt Adams is 5 of 14 lifetime against Cueto with a home run, so he could be another guy to look at if he's going to be batting cleanup today from the left side for them. Outside of that, like I said, I'm not really looking at any of these right-handed bats. I do think that St. Louis is going to make it tough. I don't think it's going to be an easy start here for Cueto. Probably wouldn't pay up for him, but also not looking at a lot of St. Louis bats. On the other side of this game, we got Adam Wainwright, and this Adam Wainwright is not the guy who you're thinking of as the lights-out pitcher. He's allowed a 300 batting average to both right and left-handed bats this year. He's definitely been getting knocked around, so I think almost everybody on San Francisco is in play. You really like the lefties, guys like Brandon Belt. You can look at a guy like Jared Parker, Denard Span, Joe Panic. I think all these guys are solid options. And then even the right-handed guys, you can look at a guy like Buster Posey, who's been heating up, hitting a lot of home runs in the last week or two, and looks like that MVP kind of guy that we expected him to be at the beginning of the season. Next game, we can look at Atlanta against the LA Dodgers. I really like the pitching matchup in this game. Julio Teheran has been great in his last couple games. Left-handed bats usually the way you want to go after him. So if you're going to take anybody on the Dodgers, I guess you're looking at a guy like maybe Corey Seager up there towards the top of the order. Shortstop option, solid, but not a ton of upside. Same thing goes for a guy like Anthony Gonzalez, solid, but not really a ton of upside. Adrian Gonzalez, I'm sorry. Solid, not really a ton of upside, more of just like a singles, doubles kind of hitter, can knock in an RBI here or there. More of a guy that I'd look for in a cash game, but in a cash game against a softer matchup. I know Teheran is bad against left-handed bats, but he has been really good lately, so I'm not expecting this Dodgers team to light him up. I guess you could also look at like a Jock Peterson if you're looking for a left-handed bat that has some power that could take Teheran deep, but honestly, I'm really not looking to pick on him all that much. On the other side of this game, I'm not looking to pick on Kenta Maeda at all. I mean, he's been really good since coming over from Japan. He faces a horrible lineup here today. This lineup just can't hit. They do have a bunch of left-handed bats, but, Maeda's been good against, left-handed and right-handed bats this year. I think he's one of the top options at starting pitcher today. I definitely don't want to take bats against him. He has a low strikeout rate, so I don't know if I really want to use him, but I'm also not really looking to pick on him at all. So that's kind of the way I see this game, pretty much staying away from all the bats. Last game up, Colorado against San Diego. Drew Pomeranz on the mound for San Diego. If you don't know about this kid, he is one of the best pitchers in the league right now. And I'm not saying best young pitchers or best pitchers on San Diego, or I'm talking best pitchers, period. Right-handed bats hitting 181 against him this year. Left-handed bats hitting 150. He was great against the Rockies the first time you saw him. And, Colorado's not a team that's very good on the road. And left-handed bats, left-handed pitchers usually give them some trouble. So I think that Pomeranz is in a really, really good spot here. His price is pretty cheap as well. So I really like him as a starting pitcher option today. You look at that team, Arenado's actually better in righty-on-righty matchups, and everybody else is left-handed, and he's been lights out to left-handed bats. So I don't really see where the offense is going to come from here. I mean, maybe DJ LeMahieu, maybe Travis Story, but again, I mean, I'd rather have Pomeranz than take any of the bats on Colorado. The other side of this game, you got Chad Russin pitching, left-handed bat, a left-handed pitcher. He has been better away from Coors Field, but so far in 2016, both righties and lefties are hitting over 300 against them. So I definitely think that, San Diego could get some runs against them today. San Diego actually does surprisingly well against left-handed pitching. And I've been saying this all season and people are laughing at me, but everybody who took Wade Miley last night kind of learned the lesson the hard way. This team can hit lefties. Their problem is they're all right-handed, so they struggle against right-handed pitching. But they got a lot of right-handed bats that can hit left-handed pitching well. Matt Kemp, probably the best of them. Will Myers, another guy that's in there. Yangarvis Solarte also in there. Even Derek Norris, the catcher, is a guy who's done well against left-handed pitching his entire career. So if you see a lefty going up against San Diego, I know San Diego's a bad team and they don't normally put up a lot of runs, but they've had some good games against lefties this year. So I definitely don't think I'm going to be looking Russin's way, although some people are going to be talking about him as a cheap option. You know, I didn't like Miley yesterday for the same reason, so I'm certainly not going to like Russin, who I think is an even worse pitcher today. And that wraps it up for our Benny's Bat section for Friday, June 3rd. Thank you guys for joining us here at rotocurve.com. And as always, stay classy, DFS.